You're welcome back. It's still business morning. Moving on to the commodities market now. Oil prices extended gains after rising 1% the previous session as bullish forecasts on recovering demand this summer outweighed concerns about the impacts of rising COVID-19 cases in India, Japan, and Brazil. Brent crude for June rose 22 cents to $67.49 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude for June was at $64.04 a barrel, up 18 cents. OPEC Plus stuck to their plans for a gradual easing of oil production restrictions from May to July after OPEC raised slightly its demand growth for 2021 to 6 million barrels per day. The group also expects global stocks to reach 2.95 billion barrels in July, taking them below the 2015-2019 average. The bank also expects vaccination campaigns in North America and Europe to boost oil demand to a record high of 101.5 million barrels per day this summer, by cautioning that rising COVID-19 cases in India and Brazil could hit local demand if deeper lockdowns are reimposed. Now, to talk more about the decision of OPEC Plus and other issues in the commodities market is Oluwambe Pelumi Olanubi. She's an analyst with financial derivatives company. Good morning,
to have you.
Pelumi. Good to have you again today.
Thank you
we have some unfinished discussion from Tuesday.
Yes,
Absolutely.
But first, let's talk about the decision of OPEC Plus. How do you think it will affect Nigeria?
Yes, so globally, oil price is actually, the oil price is actually determined by three major factors in this current time. First is the issue of rise in cases of COVID-19 infection. Secondly is the stimulus package by major economies, and also is the rate of vaccination. And also we know that the price of oil is majorly determined by the demand and supply of oil prices. So we see this optimism in the market regardless of the increasing cases we've seen in India and other European countries, yes, in recent time. So in respect of all that, we still see the market still being optimistic about, recovery. So we saw that this has actually pushed prices upward than what, and OPEC has actually said they are sticking with their plan to relax and production cut in this coming month, May, June, and July, as they had said before. So we hope that price levels, oil price, will still range about the $66 to probably $69 in the coming months.
Okay, well, the federal government, we still have this issue of PMS, price, and they've said they will not increase in May. But how sustainable is this with all that's going on in this market right now, with this volatility?
Yes, as we also saw yesterday that NNPC actually clearly stated that they spent an amount of 120 billion naira on subsidy, and they said they don't have that much again to remit the coming month, coming May and coming month. So we see that as it is now, subsidy has come to die a natural death because the government cannot sustain it. Although they've said they cannot, they've told the public that they won't raise pump price. But the truth is, the landed cost of pump right now is valued at 212 to 232 naira, and it's still sold at the filling station. Anytime we go there, still buy it at 162 to 165. So this margin someone is asked to pay for it. And the truth is, we have seen the cloud gathered, we are feeling the breeze, someday the rain will fall.
And Labour has said that they will not take an increase until the refineries are repaired.
Yes.
So, I mean, where are we going
The truth is, we should all prepare for this increase. That is the way forward, because they can't sustain that huge amount every month to augment for subsidy, knowing fully well that we have other obligations. Government has other obligations that are more pressing. So although they might not eventually lift totally, but significantly we might see increase in pump price. And that would, of course, feed into inflation and all that.
Well,
so I think we should go to the discussion within her. FTC has predicted that the inflation rate will hit 25%.
Food inflation.
Food inflation, yes. We would like to know the factors you consider to arrive at this 25%.
First and foremost, most of our household staples, raw material used for some of these products, are imported. Like we discussed on Tuesday, if you remember, the issue with wheat, and we've seen even corn prices, global corn price has increased. Now cocoa, which is one of our major exports, we've seen that there's a decline in the price of cocoa, which is we've seen cocoa farmers clamoring for more funding to access more seedlings so that they can produce more. All these are actually factors. And also we see the seasonality issue. This is planting season, so there is limit to supply of food items in the market. Also the issue issue of exchange rate pass-through effect on imported goods. Okay, we all know that Nigeria is an import-dependent country. If you look at each and every one of us, assess what we are wearing, we can see the imported components.
Unfortunately so.
Unfortunately so. So going forward, all these are still going to affect domestic prices one way or the other. And we forecast that if nothing is done in sense of MPC meeting should happen later in May, and we hope that probably they might tighten up a little just to curtail money supply and all that. That would probably help to reduce inflation. But if not, going forward, we see inflation rate still increasing, and it might reach, I'm afraid that it might reach as high as 25%. And that means it becomes more expensive to eat what you ate in January.
Wow. And you still have the same supply. For instance, if you're a salary earner, you don't have an increase. Even if you're doing businesses, where would the money just come from to increase your revenue?
Aside that, the real value of income up to is actually eroding because inflation is actually reducing the true wages, the true value of, yes. So because of that, what you would normally, your standard of living, one way or the other, is actually declining. And there is no help in the sense that governments who have a lot of obligation, and we've seen the issue of, during the COVID issues, trying palliatives and all that to support livelihood and all that. But going forward, government is more concerned about other important projects, for instance, the issue of infrastructural deficit, trying to raise exchange rates and all that. So
the government has their hands full.
Hands full, actually.
It sounds like a very complicated thing for the country.
It's actually a structure. I know where we try to see it. These factors driving inflation, are they structural issues? Are they transient issues that probably in the next couple of months they'll be eroded? Or are they persistent issues? And we found that, majorly money supply is a persistent issue because eventually we all say that inflation is a monetary phenomenon. But beyond that, issues like seasonality, issues like insecurity, even issues like we said, increase in imports, they are all structural issues. And if structural issues are not dealt with, we'll keep having these factors pushing up prices, commodity prices.
Anyway, you talked about the MPC meeting, but the U.S. Fed kept the benchmark rates unchanged. And was this expected, and how are the markets reacting to this at this point?
Yes, so the Fed had a 2 days intensive meeting, and Federal Reserve is actually the CBN, Central Bank of the United States. So they actually came out and they left benchmark rate unchanged, showing their support for recovery in the United States. And this has a very significant impact, not just on Nigeria, but even the global economy. This is because leaving this benchmark rate unchanged means that the US dollar will be stable in the real time, as against markets optimism or skepticism rather, because they were hoping they might raise interest rates, and if they had done that, that would increase the value of the dollar, and this will affect commodity prices because about 70% of the world reserve is actually denominated in dollars, and also global international trade, about 90% of international trade is actually carried out in dollars. And we understand that commodity prices are priced in dollars. There is an inverse relationship between the value of dollar and commodity prices. So with the Fed leaving rates unchanged, it's a good news because commodity prices does not necessarily have to increase, except for maybe commodity-specific factors that might drive each commodity. But for countries that import, Nigeria, we import wheat, we import sorghum, we import quite a number of produce that we use in our production process. So if leaving this rate unchanged means that we might not necessarily have increase using this route, although we still have the impact of exchange rate pass-through effect and other commodity-related reasons.
So external reserves for Nigeria has been on an uptick for a while, but do you see a drop?
Currently, the external reserve has actually dropped, and I believe that one of the reasons that this has happened or that has fueled this drop is because of the government, CBN selling forex to foreign investors to obtain portfolio investment, and also manufacturers. We saw that they injected about 1.47 billion into the forex I&E window in January. This is way lower than what they did last year, 2020, about 64% lower. This is just to show us that there is still this supply shortage of forex in the FX market from the official window. So if this continues, and looking at the global demand for oil, we hope that the spike in cases would not necessarily have a dampening effect on the demand for oil in Nigeria. So that would not affect our export earnings, and of course, export earnings to which talk about our results. So we expect that coming months, if all these factors are the way they are, external reserve may increase as time goes.
All right.
So this is just before you go. This is the last week. I mean, from next week we're in the month of May. What do you see with all of these factors?
So coming months, we actually see a lot of more direction in terms of so many uncertainty, both in the foreign exchange market, in the commodity market, even concerning people's responses to NPC meeting that is coming up. So in coming weeks, as we see things unfold, there will be more clarity. There's a lot of sentiment and a lot of skepticism. So we hope that when there is policy direction and all that, we see a lot of improvement and clarity.
All right, let's look at the domestic commodity prices. Most of them are on the rise at this moment. So take us through the market prices.
So basically, one of the factors or major factor driving this upward swing in prices is actually seasonality. As we all know that we are in the planting season, and because of that, the supply of major household like tomatoes, pepper, sugar and the likes, actually these prices has actually gone up, except for commodities like cement.
Yeah, so cement was down. Yeah.
Yes, it's down because demand for construction has actually declined because we're in raining season, so people don't really engage in such activities. So demand for cement has actually that pushed down the prices. But going forward, and also the fact that we are in Ramadan season, demand for provisions and all that has increased and definitely will push up prices. So we still see this increase in price until probably June, when we start seeing harvest season and we start seeing more supply of food into the market.
All right. Thank you so much, Oluwanbe Pelumi Olanubi, analyst with Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we'll go over to the equities market now, and we'll take a moment, and when we come back, Eddie is standing by to give us updates on the equities markets.